Okay, we're moving on to the Antibes top. This is the tankini length, and Aurora requested a simple back, so there's no opening. So what we're going to do is I'm going to sew both my shoulder seams and then both my side seams, and then we will be adding the sleeves onto it and the neckband. So let's get started. So I'll just go ahead and I'm going to start along one of the side seams. And I'm using the lightning bolt stitch again. If you have a serger, you can do this completely on your serger if you'd like. Just make sure your seam allowance is a 1/2 inch. If you notice your sewing machine is starting to get a little loud, it probably needs to be cleaned. When you're sewing swim, it tends to get dirty quicker. So after I finish this top, I'll probably give it a good cleaning. And I'm not pulling the fabric at all. I'm just letting it, kind of guiding it through. You want to make sure when you're sewing with stretch material that you don't pull it. The stitch that you're using will allow it to stretch when it's worn. Make sure you lock it up near the armpit, so that way when you attach your sleeve, your stitches aren't coming apart. I'll move along to the shoulder seam. See if I can get in and show you. I'm starting pretty, let me lift that presser foot up. I start, what is that, maybe like a 1/4 inch in, so that way my fabric's not getting sucked down. But you can backstitch. See if I can get this tilted down a little bit. There we go. Alright. I've also found that if I kind of just hold my finger right here, it won't allow the fabric to be sucked in either. Just a little trick I've found over the years. Take my last bobby pin out. I'm going to pause this while I finish the other 2 seams, and then we will move on to a sleeve. Okay, so I've got all those sewn, and what I've done is I went ahead and trimmed the seams with my pinking shears. They won't fray, but I like to trim them down just so they're not as bulky. If you have a serger, you can use a serger, but I prefer just to, if I'm being quick, just to go ahead and trim it. And also wanted to show you that you really don't have to have a serger in order to sew this. It can all be done just on your regular sewing machine. Next, we're going to take our sleeves And I've already got it clipped together. So I'm just going to sew straight down here to make it a tube. And then I'll trim that as well. You can also hem it before you attach it. It's usually easier just to hold on to the sleeve. So I will probably go ahead and hem it. Trim my stitches. And you can hem it on your regular sewing machine. You're going to switch to a zigzag stitch. I usually do 3.5 width and a 2.5 length. You can also use the lightning bolt stitch. My personal preference, if I'm going to use a stitch, I'd prefer just to use the zigzag. You're going to fold it to the back. See if I can get this to focus. Fold it to the back. I'll go ahead and put a clip here. And usually you want to do it about 3/8 inch. I'm just going to be real honest with you. I usually eyeball it. I've been hemming so many things that you just kind of know by visual. You can also hem it flat if that's easier for you. It just, the seam won't be hidden right here if you hem it flat and then join the ends together. I will be hemming this on my cover stitch. Which is the machine that automatically puts the 2 rows of stitching on it. And that's pretty good. Let's see if I can turn this over to where my cover stitch is. Lift this up a little bit. Turn it on. Now, when you put your fabric on, the right side of the fabric should be inside the tube, and then you're going to sew on the inside of the circle, basically. So I've actually got to remove this first clip so I don't get it caught under my needle. Get it in place. And I don't know if you can see this, but I've got a line right here that I line up my fabric, and that's a 3/8 inch hem. So I'm going to hem this, and then I'll catch back up with you in a second. Okay, so I've got my sleeve. It is hemmed. We're going to turn it right side out. Mark the halfway point up at the top of the sleeve. Your bodice is going to be inside out. Okay. We're going to put this top raw edge of the sleeve. Let's see if I can show you this way. And we're going to put it inside the neckline. Turn your sleeve around. Go in through the neck. And you're going to stop at the shoulder seam. You want to make sure the raw edge of your arm seam and the raw edge of your sleeve are matched up. So here's my shoulder seam. I'm going to flatten out my shoulder seam. And I'm going to slip my pin. Turn it around so we can see what we're doing. I'm going to slip this pin. I got to take it off to slip it. So I will hold that in spot. Now that both layers are together, go ahead and clip it. Then we're going to go down to the armpit area and we're going to clip those together. Open up your seam allowance. Just clip it right on. Then what you're going to do is you're going to work your way around. Start at the top. And we're going to match up our raw edges and clip every little bit. This is called easing in the sleeve. And then one more. And then you go ahead and repeat it for the other half of the sleeve. So when you're easing in the cap of the sleeve, you kind of got to curve it around a little bit because the top of the sleeve is curved. And one more. So we're going to match it up. Now on sleeves, I used to start trying to sew all the way down here where the armpit is. But I found that it's easier if I start up on the upper curve of the sleeve, so the cap of the sleeve, and it's easier to get the correct seam allowance down at the armpit. So let's go over to the sewing machine. I've got my lightning bolt stitch already. I'm going to start on the upper edge of, here's my shoulder seam, you can see, and I'm starting back here. Now you can see that this is kind of buckling a little bit, so we're going to have to make sure we pull this portion you're going to sew around a curve. So you want to make sure it's not folded underneath. And see, as soon as I pull that so it's flat, it kind of gets that wrinkle away. There's a way to sew in sleeves before the side seams are sewn. I personally prefer it this way because I think it lays better in the armpit. That's just a personal preference. Every little bit you're going to maneuver your fabric and see if I can make this so you guys can get the best view. Sometimes you have to go back in and fix mistakes. We'll check it out after. Keep going around that curve. Now we're coming down to the underarm area. Just make sure your seam allowances are, your seams are staying open. We're almost back to the beginning. And we'll take a look at it. Okay, so I've got my sleeve sewn in, and I've got my seam. You'll want to trim the seam. I trim it with the pinking shears. You can use a serger if you want to use the knife to cut it off. We're going to trim it as pretty far down, a little over halfway. And so I will trim that and show you. Alright, so I've got it trimmed down, and now when we pull it right side out, we have a sleeve. An attached sleeve. So now I'll need to add the other one on, and then I'll be back to add the neckline. I'll make a new video for that one.